Welcome to a new video on AlHuTV. Today I have the pleasure of introducing something to you, the ECOVACS, the GOAT O1200 Leader Pro. This is this beautiful model here for the lawn, in other words a robotic lawn mower, which is what we have here. On the outside here, and this is completely new to me, we have this True Edge. This comes in various versions, but in this version where we have a spindle down here, that's something I'm not familiar with at all. So we'll take a closer look at that as well. Back here we have what's called the Horoscope 360. This ensures very precise navigation. I'd also like to show you this in a bit more detail. Up front here, of course, we have a camera, which together with all these technologies handles a huge amount of objects, hedgehogs and the like. It recognizes everything and navigates through perfectly. We'll take a look at that too. So this is a very promising mowing or lawn mowing robot, and the one that I'm presenting to you here in my video. All right, let's get started right away. I just set it up outside and then basically started my first run here. Namely, how do you get started? Of course, we have to drive around the boundary of our property once so that we know where we need to go, or rather where it should mow. That's how you have to put it. There are various setting options for this. Of course, there's the manual way as we know it. But by now, more and more of these mowing robots can also drive fully automatically here. Of course, we don't need RTK, boundary wire or GPS. The robot can navigate perfectly here thanks to its Horoscope 360 and, of course, the AW3D obstacle detection. And that's how it works best, or so to speak. As mentioned, you don't need installation, takes less than 10 minutes. You can get started right away. Just like with all the others, you can easily create the map here. We can then, in the map itself, which I'll show you again afterwards, of course, separate the zones. And that's also very important. After we've created the lawn, the area, we can still separate the zones. I want to point out specifically that there are some robotic mowers where you can't do that. Here you can. That's definitely a big plus when it comes to the map. So, once everything is set up here, we can of course get started with mowing right away. That's not an issue at all. I've just shown here what it all looks like. Here you can see how it looks when it drives its tracks completely parallel, lane by lane. In the app, you can of course adjust quite a few things, for example, the direction in which it operates, but also the mowing height, of course, and so on and so forth. We'll definitely take a closer look at that separately in the app. And it definitely does a very good job at that. Yes, and then it moves along its path here bit by bit with a navigation accuracy of 2 centimeters, as they say. That's already very high. Of course, it's quite difficult to test, but the mower still looks like new. It also turns very intelligently. At the corners, I have to say, not towards the fence, not towards the stone, but it really pays attention to which direction it turns. Yes, and once we've already mowed everything here and are finished, then of course we can also do the edges. Or rather, here it's called the so-called True Edge trimmer, used here. For this, on the underside, I'll show it on screen, it's almost easier than lifting the mower up. There is, just like you know from a trimmer, the whole thing. It drives very, very precisely along the edge here. As I said, this also speaks to the 2 centimeter navigation accuracy that we have here. Then it starts this trimmer and trims the grass right here at the edge. I always went over and wondered, why does it stop every time? And I want to show you that now. It actually detects people nearby and then stops immediately due to the risk of an accident. For example, if children run over while the trimmer is running, you could, if you wanted, reach in here with your hand. But the detection was so good that even when I kept a lot of distance and with the camera here holding the whole thing with the pole, with the telescopic pole, and even then it recognized me and stopped trimming. It wasn't so easy to film, I have to say, because that's actually part of the safety feature. Nevertheless, the trimming was really excellent, I have to say. I think I've never managed to mow so close to the edge before. That's definitely a big plus point for it already. Of course, the noise level is something else when the trimmer is running up here, but that's something you're familiar with. It spins relatively fast, so maybe not ideal for a Sunday, but definitely fine for a weekday. Cool thing, I think it's really, really impressive. And you can also see here in the videos how well the whole thing works. So the trimmer is top-notch, and I think it's the best I've tested so far. Yeah, speaking of precision, of course, we also want to use the AWI 3D obstacle detection camera, which we have here at the front, as well as the Horoscope 360. One is for mapping and the other is for recognizing objects, animals, and toys. For this, I did my hedgehog test. Here too, it very clearly recognized that there was a hedgehog, drove around the hedgehog, basically made a small curve, and that worked out very, very well. Furthermore, I locked the robot in my bar cage here and started it again. But you can see right away it has absolutely no problems navigating through here. It doesn't bump into any bars here either. And even when it goes back to the bars, it navigates through them perfectly as well. So everything here speaks in favor of this navigation system. It really works excellently. You just have to say that. And then, well, what? What problems could you still have with it? I can tell you, you can still have problems, namely inclines and passageways, small 80-centimeter ones. I tested those as well, and they also posed no problems or caused no issues for our ECOVACS Gold O1200 Ladder Pro, because even here, with both an incline and a narrow passage at the same time, it managed perfectly. No problems at all. I would even say that's actually narrower than 80 centimeters, but still, it navigated its way through here. It can handle normal passages just as well as these narrow ones, so that's also top notch. I've saved the whole thing as a route and we'll take another look at that in a moment in the app, and so it knows that it's really just supposed to drive through here. And the incline, as I said, up to 45%, which is about 24 degrees, it can handle here. In my example here, I would almost say it's pretty much at the limit. And again, as I said, you saw it. It had no problems at all. Yes, a rain sensor is also installed here, so that's not an issue either. If it starts to rain while it's running, then of course it will return to the station and wait there accordingly. You can also adjust this a bit in the app depending on what you want, like how long it should wait, but we'll take a look at that directly in a moment. I've already got the smartphone ready for this, so we can dive right in and take a look. Now I'd like to show you the app, so here we can already see very nicely what the property looks like. Also the zones, these white lines you see here, these are basically the zones I've set up. I can edit them however I like. As you can see, Melflecker, I can also rename it if I want to. Down here you can already see merge and split. You can also merge them again, that's no problem at all. Of course, for the recording, I divided everything the way I needed it. And out here, now I'll go back a little bit. Out here you can see it very clearly. That's the path. That's the trail where it goes up at my place, and it's relatively narrow. And then it leads to the next patch of lawn. And as I said, it managed to go over that multiple times without any problems, never got stuck once. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and if you're interested here, this is what it all looks like. This is how the so-called Horoscope 360 works. You can see the entire property mapped out here. And also what the garden looks like here. If you look, I think you can see it quite well. The house, you can see the garden here, and especially the trampoline and so on. And then you can see here what the whole property looks like. Even the car is parked, you can see that. And the trees and the bushes, wonderful. Very nice to look at this 3D map, you just have to say that. Otherwise, when it comes to automatic mowing, of course, it mows automatically. It does everything. You can also do area mowing, like with zones, the individual zones, however you want. I mentioned edge trimming earlier, maybe not on Sundays. Otherwise, it was tip-top, and you can even mow manually if you want, so you can handle everything here a bit more manually. And then we come to the settings. Here we can already see how much it has run. Yes, 3 hours and 20 minutes. With the mowing settings and efficiency settings, you can edit the areas again here. Yes, as you can see, if I click on the whole thing here, I can completely edit the mowing area. So for one, you can set the cutting height between 3 and 8 centimeters. This is done fully electrically here, of course, you don't have to do it manually. And then the efficiency of the movement speed, you can specify here in which direction it should move everything. You can already see now the whole thing looks a bit different. I'll click on it again. Then down here we can, again, normal environment, flat environment. That means it recognizes things earlier here. You can see it here. Objects from 10 centimeters in height, from 15, and from 20. So depending on how it is, you can set this separately for each area. So, and then we can add adjust a few small things. I mentioned the rain sensor earlier. You can also set here how long it should pause. I've definitely activated animal protection, so it should definitely not run at night. I don't want that either. It updates itself completely automatically. And now I'm a bit too far zoomed out. Here you can also set up some AI detections again, so it should detect hedgehogs, cats, dogs, hoses. Of course, the AI detection should recognize these, also people detection. As I told you, definitely leave that on, especially because of the trimmer. It provides a certain level of safety, but it's already set up like that by default. Then, as I said, you can still adjust a few small things here, like the voice output in the end, at what volume. And if we go to more, we see a few more informational notes. So I have to say the app is very straightforward, but it has everything you need. You can also see the status up here, and otherwise you can set your schedule however you like, and that's it. It's basically ready to use right away. I think the app is super smart, really kept to just what's necessary, not complicated at all. You can do everything you want here and get started right away, so really top notch. I really like the whole thing. The robot itself is truly a top product, I have to say. I think I've already been able to test quite a few. Definitely among the very best I've tested or had the chance to test, that's clear. I've already tested a previous model before. They've really stepped it up here. You just have to say that. And to be completely honest, so far it's really one of them, one of the top products of this year. It's definitely worth checking out. You can find it down in the description, of course. The whole thing is linked there. You can take your time and read through it again. It's definitely worth reading up on it. It's really top notch. That has to be said. Otherwise, you really can't go wrong here. I was super satisfied. Top robot. That's it from my side. Otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and also give a like. Leave your hype and everything else there as well if you tune in again in the next video. That's it from my side. See you next time on AlHuTV.